the problem of mass poverty is a fact. The World Bank recently shifted its focus on rural development and agricultural investments to ease the lives of an estimated 1 billion poor people across the globe. Yet despite the more than 23 billion pesos budget proposed for the Agriculture Department and agricultural modernization for 2008, nagging questions on whether the budget can really lift the lives of the rural poor and perk up the lethargic rural economy remain. There is no clear, sustained, comprehensive, adequately funded rice production program in the budget for agriculture. A well-crafted, well-funded, and technically supported rice production program is a potent strategy to energize the countryside anew. 1 million hectares of paddies would bloom. A reformed, and disciplined version of the Masagana 99 will not only produce the 16 or 17 million metric tons of rice a year for domestic consumption. It will also serve as a true anchor of our food security aspirations. Moreover, the achievement of rice self-sufficiency through a more physically disciplined version of Masagana 99 will energize several rural institutions like rural banks, farm cooperatives, retail outlets for farm inputs and implements. There will be rice on every table, jobs in the countryside, step-up trade, and rural economic institutions coming back to life. In fact, the lost dignity of our rice farmers will be recaptured. The dollars drained by years of rice importation will remain in the country. For the past 10 years, the Philippines, a country of rice farmers, has the embarrassing record of importing more than 1 million metric tons of rice every year. The 23 billion peso budget even fails to do the basic thing of massively funding our agricultural research and development. The R&D budget should not be a blip in the agricultural universe. It should get 2 billion pesos this year, with the R&D fund escalating by 1 billion until it reaches the 5 billion peso mark. Why? Because this is the most cost-efficient agricultural investment. We have not paid enough attention to providing post-harvest facilities. Anywhere from 10 to 20 billion pesos worth of crops are wasted annually due to the lack of post-harvest facilities. The regional allocation of the national budget is as skewed and flawed as the allocation per expenditure program. The autonomous region in Muslim Mindanao, the region with a poverty rate of more than 60% and an illiteracy rate of more than 50%, is at the bottom of the regional priorities. And just like Caraga, to which the cliché poverty-stricken is a sad understatement of its depression and deprivation. The anti-poor bias is a constant in all the pages of the national budget, not only in the allocations for education, health, and agriculture, and the utter neglect of regions that need state investment and intervention most. Where do we get the funds? It will always be a question, Mr. President, where to source the funds that we wish to add to the sectors that need prioritizing. These are matters that should provide support as to how we can reconfigure the budget. Interest payment allocation amounts to 290 billion pesos, which represents 30% of the total new appropriations. This is 12 billion pesos higher than that allotted by the lower house. Retaining the interest payments set by the lower house would have freed 12 billion pesos of public funds for productive social services. Total debt service is more than 618 billion pesos, accounting for the interest payments and the principal amortization of 328 billion pesos. The combined allocations for the departments of health, education, environment, and natural resources and agriculture, including the Agriculture and Fisheries Modernization Program, or the AFMA, is only 186 billion pesos. Aside from debt service, additional funding of 1.3 billion pesos from the 1.5 billion peso allocation from the Office of the President's budget for the purchase of air transport equipment can be rechanneled to education, health, agriculture, and environment. The Transparency International has just recently reported that the Philippines is at the top rung of countries most affected by bribery in the world. Mr. President, this all boils down to governance, or in this case, misgovernance. Mr. President, when I started my remarks, I emphasized that the bottom line for the 2008 budget should be its impact on poverty reduction. In many issues of national importance, citizens, especially the poor, have looked to the Senate for the redress of wrongs, inequality, and injustice. They look to us to correct the notion that a balanced budget is more important than liberating them from the clutches of extreme poverty, from the lack of basic education, and life-threatening diseases. Mr. President, this is a challenge I pose before this chamber today. Let us open the new year with a reconfigured budget that will look after the poor, the hopeless, the desperate, and those that have been languishing on society's margin. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President.